I did not expect to have a customer in when I was supposed to go live. And so I was like, oh, wow, okay, I'm supposed to go live. And I am dealing with these lovely people. They were quite lovely. They were very nice. So here I am. And today we are going to talk about value. Light to dark. So light to dark in our paintings and how to create a value scale from light to dark, because in watercolor we work from light to dark. So here we go. All right, move a couple of these things out of the way and kind of show you how to create a couple of value scales. If my music in the background is too loud, just let me know. Let's see. So value scale is quite literally the foundation of creating your watercolor paintings so that you can learn how to layer and create dimension within your paintings. So this is kind of where we're going to go so that you can see how you create value. So here we go. I'm gonna leave this up here so you can see where we're going, so I can see where we're going. So, and we'll do a couple of different techniques. So I am using Artistic Isle Handmade Watercolor. It's available on artisticisle.com. So you want to create a wash in a ceramic or a glass palette. Watercolor palettes, if you have a plastic one, the paint will bead. And it's just a little bit more difficult to work with. So you can continue to add more paint to that wash. I'm gonna turn down my music. Okay, so you can continue to add paint to it to get from your lightest color to your darkest color. And then you will just have the straight paint in the end on your value scale. I need a blotter. Be warned, the shop is open to in-person customers. So if I do have a customer, I will definitely either step away from the live or possibly end it. So that's just a heads up there. So, hi, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. I am using Artistic Isle Handmade Watercolors, and they are available on artisticisle.com. If it is your first time purchasing, you can use code FIRST10, FIRST, and the number 1010 for 10% off. All right, here we go. So I am going to create a few little squares and possibly toggle between the four paintings just to kind of show the value and light and dark, and possibly allow some of them to dry as we go. So the gold ochre will be the underpainting for each of the squares. In this one, I did kind of go from light to dark, and then I did a glaze on top of the bright yellow New Gamboge. So that also made a little bit of a difference. I'm not in love with this Grumbacher paper, so I'm gonna go back to my Canson Moth Ball. This is the Canson Moth Ball. I much prefer it. It's what I work more on. Yes, thank you. Thank you for answering that. That is true. I'm good. How are you? As a beginner, I would say just start. I would grab a few colors, and you learn how to best control your water by creating with watercolor. And so many people will say, I have trouble controlling my water. Well, have a blotter nearby, a paper towel or a washcloth, so that you can get your desired consistency. It's really important just to start, because you're not going to get better at something just by thinking about it. You usually get better at something by doing it. So I am painting a few squares so that I don't have to dry a lot, because I do have a dryer next to me as well, because I usually paint wet on dry, because if you paint wet on wet with watercolor, it will bleed, and you'll have these little balloons depending on what color you use. So that's kind of what will happen if it's a wet on wet situation and it bleeds. Whereas if it's a wet on dry, it's kind of going to stay wherever you put it. And I will dry these backgrounds up once I'm done with them, because we are working on value. Basically going from light to dark with watercolor. Feel free to ask any questions as I go. I'm using a size 10 Princeton Round Velvet Touch to cover larger areas, and then I will decrease in size as I get to more detailed areas of the painting. So I'm using a light burnt sienna for this portion here. Use water to blend. So if you add your paint to the palette and then to the paper, I'm just adding water right here to make an even coat over my area. Now in this one, I am going to draw my flower pot and then put the background. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just do a little shape that looks kind of like a flower pot, because we're going to end up painting over it anyway, while adding more dimension and different colors. Whenever you paint multiple shapes, it helps you get a feel for your water and how much you're using, and it helps you learn more. So that's why I've also created several of these. And it also helps with dry time. So if you're creating small thumbnails and then painting those, by the time I've worked on this one should be dry. And if it's not, then I can dry it. And I won't have to spend as much time with the dryer when I get back up here. This is more of a practice makes progress kind of situation. So that you can just get the technique really down. And while this one's still a little damp, I can still get the flower pot in there. But I'm still going to go ahead and dry things up. The thumbnails also allow you to practice different color schemes and techniques as you move. So it just allows you to experiment a little bit more. I'm so glad you guys are here. If you have any questions about technique or watercolor, paper, whatever brush I'm using, please let me know. If you're just now tuning in, this is kind of where we're headed with our watercolor painting today. I have reservations about tearing it out of the book. So I am going to mix some red with this, and I'm going to move my other larger palette over. Because I'm going to play with the colors on this flower pot or planter, if you will. Just remember, with watercolor, you are working from your lighter colors to your darker colors, because watercolor is more transparent, whereas gouache, acrylic, or oil paints will usually be more opaque, meaning you will not be able to see through them as well. So normally in acrylic, you can work whatever way you want. If you want to work light to dark or dark to light, doesn't really matter, because whenever you layer, you can layer right over the top of it and have a significant brilliance of the color still. Crickets, huh? You're awfully quiet over there. So earlier today I had a private watercolor lesson and she wanted to learn how to paint water. And then I had two random fun customers come in and say, hey, we're just gonna paint watercolor. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, have you ever painted before? No. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Would you like a crash course? I guess, not really, we just wanna paint. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, thanks. So that was definitely interesting. So that was new for me. Man, having an in-person shop has totally been a ride, a wild, wild ride, because I've operated online for the last 7 years, and normally you don't see your customers. They don't come in once a week. They don't work at the same place as your husband works, you know, something like that. So, all right. So I'm going to say that my light source is over here, and then we can start darkening these areas. You kind of want to pick where your light source is, even if you just have to draw on your paper that, hey, this is where the sun is, so that you notice, hey, this side is going to be lighter and that side will be darker. And like I said before, having the multiple thumbnails allows you to practice different techniques as you go. The adding the yellow over the top to make it brighter is just a glazing technique, just adding a lighter color over the top. And it makes it feel like this is a bright, warm area of that item. Whereas with these, I'm just using water to blend and show the dimension on the object. And once these are dry, I can always go back and layer that yellow over the top to show a lighter or warmer hue on that side as well. So I'll move it up just so that you can see kind of what I'm working on. I know, when it's on time lapse, it's like, oh yeah, you get from A to B so much faster. I completely get that. Let's see here. So a great color for shadows, I would do Prussian blue with a little bit of burnt sienna. And our shadow is going to go this way since our light source is over there. And it will always be darkest closest to the object. And I'll probably do a few layers on the shadow as well. And I'm also experimenting with the amount of water that I'm using as I go to the thumbnails. You can see that there's more water here where there's less water over here. And that does make a difference in your layering process. And if you really wanted to, you can always play with the position of the sun as well on the object and decide, oh, well, I want the shadow over here, and I decide on this one, my sunshine is going to be over here. So then it would cast a different shadow. And you would blend this vessel out differently. I will get this large ceramic palette listed soon. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. That's so sweet of you, Mr. Airfan. I think that's how I say that. So. So it's more of just a process going from your light to dark and sticking with it. Because these look very elementary up here, whereas you can see that the ones that are lower on the page, they're beginning to take more shape. And so you have to get through that stage that's like, this looks like a toddler did it. And be like, okay, I'm just gonna keep working with it. I'm going to keep layering. I'm going to keep learning. It's really important just to work through that stage. And because you're not gonna get better if you quit. You're not going to become a great artist, because here's the deal, none of us were born with this skill. It's something that you have to work on over time. And so watercolor is a skill, just like anything else. If you wanted to become excellent at swimming, you're gonna have to spend a lot of time swimming. If you wanna be great at watercolor, you're gonna have to spend a little bit of time watercoloring. So just know that it takes time. So one of the things you wanna practice are your thin lines and your thick lines. So thin lines are great for twigs and creating branches on plants. And so I have some branches that I've created here. And I'm just creating little light washes in my palette. A wash is paint plus water. Oh. Well, the more you practice, the better you get, whether it's learning English or, yeah, but thank you for tuning in. I will repost this after I'm done. And again, just use water to blend. My water cups are over here, so sometimes you just hear me clinking. The palette's kind of heavy. It's ceramic. All right. Then to add additional dimension, if you added more branches to your plant. I'm missing my favorite brush, so I'm probably going to switch over to it for a little bit. Now, I usually work pretty small, so the size 0 Princeton Neptune is kind of my jam. zoom in a bit so that you can see the plant that I'm working on. And as you can see, if you use more paint, less water, your colors are going to get darker with watercolor. And if you use more water, less paint, your colors will get lighter. So I got a little bit too much water, so I'm slowly, the only thing painting with watercolor is hard because you probably haven't done it a lot. Is that correct? I bet learning English was difficult too when you first started. It's difficult to understand a new language if you haven't practiced it very much or if you haven't heard it very much. And the same is with watercolor. If you haven't practiced much, you're probably not going to be very good. And so the more practice you have, the better you get. Well, what colors are you using? Because, for example, let's see here. Let's just do a quick color mixing lesson. So I have New Gamboge and I have Ultramarine Blue, both great colors. They're going to make a green variation, the two of them. If you use more blue, your green will get darker and more blue-green. If you use more yellow, I would use 100% cotton cold press watercolor paper or hot press. Hot press is just a smoother surface. Cold press has a little bit of a texture. And not all blue and yellow will make the same color. So if I use the New Gamboge and I decide to use Cobalt Teal instead, I'm going to get a brighter green. It's going to be more of a grass green or a leaf green. And so it will be a bit lighter of a color instead of the dark one. Your paint matters. The type of paint that you're using really, really matters. I would use a professional grade and try to make sure that the colors are more pure. Because if you're using a cheap watercolor set, it doesn't surprise me that you're getting browns whenever you mix. If I mix my purple, that's Pizzazz, with a blue, I'm going to get a really lovely purple blue flower color. And if any of you are wondering what language I'm listening to, I am listening to Hawaiian because I started my business in Hawaii, and I really like to listen to the Hawaiian radio station. All right, and once that dries, then I'll layer over the top of it. This is more of a trust the process situation, because to get your dimension, you're going to have to layer more. Items in the background are going to have less detail, whereas items in the foreground will have more detail, and they're usually darker. I usually tell individuals that I like purple too. I usually tell individuals that say professional watercolor paint is too expensive. I would say buy one pan at a time and start in monochrome, because if you're working in monochrome, then you're able to, as a beginner, work on your shadows, work on light to dark, those kind of things. So even if you're just buying what you can afford, I would literally just start one color at a time. I would start with yellow, and then I would do a blue. I would either do ultramarine or Prussian, and then I would do a red or a pink color, just to kind of balance out your palette. Expensive can be relative. What's expensive to one person is pocket change to another. But I would buy a professional grade paint. I make professional grade paint. I'm happy to ship it anywhere in the world. It is price comparable to Daniel Smith, Schmink, Ecoline, other professional brands. Color will play a factor in your paintings as well. If you use a little bit of a variety of colors, it will help create additional dimension as well. I'm painting with Phthalo Teal Green, which is this teal green here. And then I have Burnt Sienna here, Prussian Blue, Ultramarine, New Gamboge, and Gold Ochre. This set here is the 28 well ceramic half pan set. I do have it available at $175. I just haven't listed it on the website. Maybe I can get that up tonight. So, all right, let's see here. So this is the non-metallic set. I had made a metallic set of 28 colors back in 2023, I think. Yeah, plant's turning out pretty good. Oh, this is a Neptune, size 0, Princeton. I'm just layering Prussian blue over this. It will give a really nice shadow. And then just use water to blend. Well, if I was speaking Russian, I would think that learning Russian or Chinese is difficult, but it would just take me a little while. I think German would be a difficult language to learn too. I can speak a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of Italian, which I like both of those language much more. And I still prefer Italian and Spanish over French too. I've heard that. No, I have not tried the Persian language. But I hope you learned some new things about watercolor today and how to create value in your paintings. I did do a really fast time lapse of this one and how to create that. So go ahead and check out my YouTube shorts and some of my other things. And I will see, I was doing the progression of this one as well. And those are just kind of some simplified natures of it. Oh. Well, thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will repost this so that you can learn how to watercolor more and get better at it over time. Have a great day.